What it do, peeps? It's the B Chef with Watch the Damn Tape. Hit that like, that share, that subscribe button. Hit that bell to get notified when I drop my next video. To my new subscribers, thank you for joining. Hope you enjoy the show and I hope you get something out of the content. To my day ones, thank you for helping me build this platform and continue to push this WNBA conversation. Today, let's get into revenue, the revenue targets, what the players are hiding, and what the players get. First, I want to start off with the jerseys. The jerseys are important because Kelsey Plum said that the players don't get jersey revenue. They don't get money from the jerseys. The reason why I named this show Each One Teach One, it's an old African proverb mainly based in the United States during slavery. When slaves were not allowed to read or write, when one would learn how to read and write, they would then be incumbents to pass it on to the next person. And that next person would teach what they know to the next one, and so on and so forth. In the WNBA, there is a huge disconnect. It's a disconnect between the present and the past. And the present, being the current players, really don't pass on anything to the next generation, and so on and so forth. So if you go into the collective bargaining agreement, and this one is from 2020, this is the one they just opted out of. This section right here talks about the licensing and everything, and basically, in short, the WNBA owns the licensing for future, current, and future. Say like the Toronto Tempo or the Portland Fire, they own those as well going forward. So nobody can come in and say, "Hey, I'm going to put a jersey out with that player." That's what this says right here. It also says that in the event if a player retires, they have 1 year to revoke their rights. They gotta write it into the league, and the league can't use their name, image, and likeness. That's the reason why you don't see Rebecca Lobo, Candace Parker, Tamika Catching jerseys on the official team's websites for old school jerseys. It's not like the NBA. The NBA guys, they want to get paid. These players are kind of selfish, so they don't want their name associated with the teams. So they really don't help grow the league and grow the game. But anyway, right here is where Kelsey Plum was flat out either uninformed or just lying her ass off. In full consideration of the rights granted by the Players Association under this agreement, WNBA Enterprises shall pay the players each season through the Players Association 50% of all merchandise revenues, product license fees within 90 days after the end of the season. WNBA Enterprises shall furnish a full and accurate statement of and accounting showing all information relating to the calculation of the product license fees for that season. The statement, and simultaneously with the submission of the statement for that season, shall pay the product license fees for that season. That was it. So it goes in further, and this is the part where Unrivaled comes in. The Players Association shall not authorize any person or entity to use any player attribute or the Players Association name, logo, whether now in existence or hereafter created or adopted, or other identifiable feature in connection with the manufacture, advertisement, promotion, or sale of any type of product other than footwear worn by a player during a WNBA or team practice, game, celebratory event, including not limited to replica jerseys or shorts, shooting shirts, sports bras, practice wear, and mesh tank tops, compression shorts, and celebratory t-shirts and headwear. And that's a deal with Nike that they have going till this December 31st. This is the part that really caught my eye. This agreement is not intended to limit and does not in any way limit the rights of each player individually and the Players Association in a group license, subject to the terms of the paragraph 6D of the standard player contract, to grant the use of player attributes for commercial or charitable purposes, provided that such individual grants or group license grants, as the case may be, do not limit or affect the rights granted to the WNBA Enterprises, or team pursuant to this agreement of the terms of the CBA or the standard player contract. So basically, The WNBA owns the rights to the players' names, not the Players Association. The Players Association joined up with a marketing firm and licensed their own wear through Unrivaled for their players. And that's why it took so long, because technically they were not allowed to do this unless Unrivaled is a charity. So, if Unrivaled is a charity, that means every player or every celebrity that we hear is really donating to a charity under the guise of supporting women's athletics and growing a basketball league, when really it is probably just a charity league. So keep that in mind, because they never mention that, but that it's contained in this right here, and they give them accurate records that they can go back and check and do audits and pull records and subpoena stuff if they want to. They're not doing it because they know that they're not selling jerseys. They know that Caitlin Clark's probably selling jerseys, and the players know that Caitlin Clark's selling jerseys. Also, there was another important tidbit in this where only about 3 or more players can really get their jerseys put into stores. The Players Association, on behalf of present and future WNBA players, hereby grants WNBA Enterprises the worldwide right to license in a group of 3 or more players the player attributes of such players, including the right to make individual use or license the individual use of a player's player attributes in a series of 3 or more players, solely in combination with the use of all WNBA or team names, logos, trademarks, etc. So if you go on any WNBA website for their team store, you might see for the Wings, you might see Arike Ugunwale, you might see Paige Beckers, and you might see Isaiah James, for example. On the Las Vegas Aces, you see Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, you see Jewel Lloyd. You don't even see a Jackie Young jersey. And you'll see a discounted Kelsey Plum. Most teams, the Valkyries have the most that I've looked up. They have the most players. They have a lot of their players. Martin, Chen, Thornton, Billings. They have a ton. They have at least 5 players' jerseys in their thing. And that's the reason why they're making money. Now, when they give the WNBA Players Association those splits, who do you think in Indiana last year was dominating sales on jerseys? So, other teams are not going to get a cut of that money. Who do you think was making money off of jerseys last year in the WNBA? Who do you think was the most hated person? And now, since now they definitely want a cut. They want to redo that deal. They want it to be an open pot. They want it to be an open pot so that, hey, nobody's got a Bridget Carlton jersey in America. Nobody. Nobody has a Julie Van Loo jersey. Nobody has a Bridget Carlton. Nobody has a Nalissa Smith jersey. Nobody has really, to be honest, nobody has pretty much anybody on the bottom of Seattle's roster, the Sparks roster. You think somebody's got a Sanaya Fagan jersey? No. So you don't have the jersey for sale for each player, and you only have a select few players that you can even really, to be honest, you got to put out three or more. And who wants to have all that overhead for a player's jersey that's not going to sell? And these jerseys are averaging over $100 a pop. No. But that's the jersey piece. And next we'll get into the revenue. The league revenue agreement. This is interesting because the language, cumulative league revenue, exceeds the cumulative revenue target applicable to such season, then subject to the provisions of Article 12, the players will be paid an equal amount to 50% of shared revenue. Shared revenue. That's the key point. Shared revenue cumulative. The WNBA shall be obligated to pay an amount equal to 25% of shared revenue of all WNBA players who were on the WNBA roster. So keep in mind, the league, the WNBA itself, only controls a small portion of the league itself. They only own a small portion. So 25% would be more than half of the shared revenue. They're splitting their money with the players. The reason why they need to stop comparing it to the NBA, because the NBA is one entity and they're sharing their money with the league, with the players association, in a like a 49-51 split. That's the difference. So as we go and continue, they get a report on how much money the league makes. Now, for the purposes of marketing, 25% of the shared revenue will go to a fund. The minimum amount required to be spent on WNBA marketing promotional agreements in the marketing period immediately following the season after the current season shall be increased by 25% of shared revenue. Now, the players can get into this bucket and promote the league. See, it's one thing, the NBA players over decades built the NBA into what it is because it was a partnership, it was an understanding. The players understood, if we grow the game, if we grow the business, we're going to make money. The WNBA players don't understand that. That's why I named the video Each One Teach One. See, the old African proverb from slavery, when slaves were not allowed to read or write. Cool, we all know that. But whenever one would learn how to read and write, it was incumbent upon them to teach the next one, so on and so forth. Each one teach one. Well, in the WNBA, they're a selfish league. So just like we learned in the Jersey, players don't care about growing the league, leaving a legacy, growing anything. So league revenue for a season will equal the total revenue amount based upon U.S. generally accepted accounting principles recorded in the WNBA LLC and subsidiaries consolidated statements of income, less any portion of such total revenue amount that is attributable barter transactions, expansion of transfer, or relocation of team. That's what the players want. They want that money. They don't want the cumulative. They want the league revenue. And right here he explains the language on the league revenue and the league target. So the target goes up 20% every year. So every year they got a target goal that they need to make. And they give you an example right here, which is great. Say, for example, in 2019, the league revenue were $10 million. Over the course of these years, the 2022 cumulative revenue target would be $43,680,000. That's that. But along the way, it would have been 12, the next one would have been 14, 17, and then cumulatively it would have been 23. The overage, they get kicked out if they go over. But if they go under, there shall be no revenue sharing for such season. Shared revenue for any season is a net overage law less than 30% deemed cost of revenue. That's important. That's what they don't understand, that. The net overage multiplied by 0.0. So they're always playing from behind. And they don't like that because they don't work. They don't build their league. They don't go out in their communities where they're at because they're always trying to chase a check. If you notice, in this league, every year players are going to hop teams. There's no continuity. Dejanay Carrington's been on several teams. You've got Caleb McBride's been on a couple teams. Courtney Williams been on a couple teams. They never stay in one place long. They're just like contractors. They're just constantly looking for the next contract So they never get to pour into this marketing fund, this marketing part that they can make. I read an article where it said that a player could be getting the max deal, 249,000, and tapping into this marketing fund, and their salary for the year could be $800,000. But they don't. These players don't. They don't want to work. In short, they just don't want to work. Period. They want the same split the guys got, but the guys had to work to get that split. And in short, they just don't want to work to get that split. They just want to be given a check. So the only thing that they can get out of this is to basically, they don't have any leverage. They don't have any leverage. They're gonna get the same type deal, even if they got a raise. And they said they got rid of the say they got rid of the hard cap and they got a raise, they would still complain. It still would be you could never satisfy satisfy a lazy person. They just want money. They just gonna want more and more money. But it's all laid out right here. These ladies do not read. And the sad part about it is the president who was in that was leading their players association when they signed the agreement is the same one they have now. Each one teach one. They do not read contracts. They don't read their books. They don't understand what they're supposed to do and their part in everything. But this is it right here. This is just basically that's cut and dry. If you just wanted to do it cut and dry, they have a target goal every year, and it started from 2021, and every year is supposed to add up. So right now they're playing from behind. Even with Caitlin Clark coming into the league last year, and that just so happened to be the year they can opt out of their contract, they have not made up for all the goof ups that they've done since 2021 going into the 2024 season to lock out. So now they want to start like 2024 is the growth. We're growing the league, and that's why they don't want to mention Caitlin Clark's name, and they don't want to give Caitlin Clark credit because they want to write that contract up like, hey, we've built the league up now. We're good. Now we're like the men. Can we get our 51-49 split? That's why Breonna Stewart said in that clip a couple weeks ago, I'd like a 49. If it was up to me, I'd like a 51-49 split. That's the reason why she said that. Because they want to just say, you know what, we effed up, but now Caitlin's here. We're going to use her, and we're just going to say, hey, it's the league. The league is popular now. We're growing. Look at the numbers. That's the reason why they're doing that. They don't want to. They just want to check. They don't want to work for it. and that cumulative revenue target and that cumulative league revenue is the stickler, because they don't get any cut of that league revenue. That the expansion fees, that's what they want to tap into because they know that's money. They know that's money, but that's revenue for the league. League revenue. And they don't meet the targets to get into league revenue. They can't get into the sharing part because they can't get past the cumulative. They can't get from 2021 at a loss during the pandemic. You weren't making no money. You weren't popular. You weren't popping. Nobody was talking about you. They can't make up for that. And so that's why they want to opt out the deal and renegotiate and come back with a contract similar to the men. But they're not going to build their own league. You see them during the All-Star weekend, they were supporting a rival league. They were doing, some of them did league events, appearances, which they all get paid for. They get paid for every league event they go do. But they don't talk about that. But that's the revenue part, folks. That's what the devil in the details is. They gotta make a target every month. I mean every year. Just like most people at most jobs, every business unit has a goal for the collective, and that's the collective. The goal is to make this amount of money. And if the Indiana Fever are raking in the dough and you're not bringing up your portion, it's still a collective. Indiana can't bring up the collective league revenue by themselves. It still takes all the other teams to do their parts. And when those parts don't do their parts, you don't get a payout. You get that 9.3% that they keep talking about. But they know the reason why they're getting 9.3%, because they're not putting in the work. But that wraps up the revenue portion. If anything else comes up, I'll let you know. Until next time, peace.